Hello and welcome to our demo of our 2-point perspective. Today we're going to be talking about sighting and finding vanishing points and drawing 2-point perspective drawings from life, and also talking about using diagonals to find midpoints. So when we're doing a 2-point perspective drawing, we're first going to need to go attach wings onto our paper because our vanishing points are going to be off of our page, unlike in 1 point when they're on the page. So tape 2 pieces of paper on either side of your drawing, and we're going to use those as our wings for our vanishing points. So once I tape that on, I'm going to do a very short demo about just drawing from imagination and doing 2-point, and then we're going to proceed to talking about using relative angles and sighting in real life to do 2-point. So we can see how the wings work, how we could fold them up and put them in our book bag. Okay, now that I have the wings on there, I'm going to just recap what we talked about in the last lecture on 2-point perspective, where I create a horizon line that goes off the page onto those wings. I create my 2 vanishing points, and I'm going to go draw a plane where the lines that recede to the left go back to that left vanishing point, and the lines that recede to the right go back to that right vanishing point, which I think we all understand after doing the stare exercise in the lecture. Except this time, our vanishing points are off our page and onto the wings. So let's talk about drawing 2-point perspective from life. So for our 2-point perspective interior drawing, which will be our last big drawing of the semester, we're going to be drawing in class. For the people taking a hybrid version of this class, we're going to be drawing in class some interior scene within the art department. So we're going to be looking for something that has 2-point perspective. So we're going to be looking around, thinking about maybe there's a stairway, maybe there's a corner where 2 hallways meet, maybe it's a section of our drawing room that has 2 points. And it's a little tricky to know the difference between 1 and 2 points. And sometimes people think they're drawing a 2-point perspective, but in fact they're drawing a 1-point perspective. So be on the lookout. Think about how 2-point perspective, we're going to see 2 planes, and we need to have 2 vanishing points that are not in our drawing, that are going to be going off the page, because we're going to need to use wings to make this be done accurately. So yet again, I'm working here in the print shop. I've found an angle where there's 2-point perspective. I can see stuff going back towards one vanishing point and another. And we're going to talk about, if we were in this room drawing this, how we go about finding those vanishing points. So I'm going to do the clock method yet again. I'm going to find the relative angle of one of the dominant angles in this image. So maybe the table, that looks pretty dominant. So I'm going to go use that clock method to find that relative angle, draw that on my piece of paper, going off the page onto the wing. Then I might go do the same on the other side, having it going off the edge, and I can use a ruler while I'm doing that. And then what I need to do, in order to find accurately where that vanishing point is, I need to go take another angle going back and figure out where it crosses. So I go and I take that back, and they go and cross right there. That'd be where one vanishing point's at. And then I can go find another angle and take that back and find out where it crosses, and that's where the other vanishing point's going to be at. So from there, I have known where my 2 vanishing points are going to be. So they're going to be both on that horizon line, which I could go put that on my piece of paper. I can see that below my horizon line, I see the tops of things. Above my horizon line, I see the bottoms of the ceiling, the bottom of the lip of the blinds here. I can't see the top of objects, so I know that's got to be above my horizon line. That's looking good. And from there I can go and I can start to figure out other relative angles that are going to go back to those vanishing points. I I can start to sight things out. So you see stuff sloping towards the left, it's going back towards that left vanishing point. Stuff that slopes towards the right is going back to that right vanishing point. The whole time I'd be sighting out the heights of different objects in there, so things are staying proportionate. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using relative angles to find out where those receding lines are going to cross. We're going to find out our two vanishing points and our horizon line, and then we're going to be doing a lot of sighting to figure out our perspective and proportions of this drawing. So we talked a little bit about how we're going to go about sighting out, finding, using the clock method, our vanishing points. So let's talk about ways of measuring when we're doing a perspective drawing. So one helpful trick, and there's lots of different ways of going about this. There's lots of techniques when it comes to doing perspective drawing. One helpful trick is locating midpoints. So midpoints are going to be the center of objects as they go back into space. We're going to be using diagonal lines to find those midpoints. So maybe you have a door that you need to put on a building. You're trying to find out where the middle's at. Midpoints are going to be how you do that. So let's say I have these two boxes and I want to go draw them in perspective. I would go and figure out where their vanishing points are going to be. And then I can go, if I want to go find out these suitcases handles, I'm going to use my diagonals to find those. So I need to find the midpoints. So a lot of times people will just put a thing in the middle. And the problem with that is if you just go put a thing, kind of eyeball it, put it in the middle of something going back into space, you might actually do it wrong. So diagonals are really important, because a lot of times you're going to think something's going to be equal, like the middle of this is going to be equal parts this side versus that side, but actually that's going to be quite wrong, because as it goes back into space, the middle of things will not be equal. It's going to change in perspective. So we can see over here where the object, where we're trying to figure out where we're going to put our net on this object, on this table, and we just kind of eyeball the middle. It's not actually right spatially, so we have to use our diagonals, and we can find out more accurately where the middle of objects are as it goes back into space. So I can use diagonals to find out where the middle of objects are. I can also use diagonals to create ellipses. Now we talked about this before, where we have an ellipse of maybe a cup, where we find the major and the minor. And that could work, but there's some issues where the top of our oval is in the same perspective as the bottom of our oval, and it might look a little off. And quite frankly, our axes are going to be slightly off in perspective, because the center of the ellipse, how we see it, is actually going to be slightly off because it's in a different perspective. So we're going to have to use diagonals to do that. I'm going to demo that. I'm going to show a couple different examples. So this is a really important concept to understand, because once we understand this, we could start to draw lots of different things like this crazy staircase. But this is what we're going to do. So say if I wanted to go draw all these different suits. This is Installation by De Hossa. It is a 2-point perspective drawing. So I would go and I would first make a box. So I've found out my vanishing points. I'd make a box around this ellipse. I'm going to make my diagonals so I can find out where the center of stuff is. Then I'm going to draw my axes, and I should be able to make a more accurate ellipse. So once we understand that, we can start to make really complex shapes. We can start to use that axis to draw, dumbbells and wheels. Remember, axes, just like in a car, are connected, so they're going to move together. Yeah, once we start to do that, we can get quite wild with it. We can start to make very futuristic buildings. We can start to make cones. When we're first drawing out stuff in perspective, we need to draw like we're seeing through the object. And that's going to help us understand how those axes are going to work, how we're going to be able to space out things, and how they're going to work within a three-dimensional plane. Okay, so I got a little demo about this, so hopefully it'll help click a little bit more. There's also lots of other examples. I have a PDF of this if you're interested, the Perspective Drawing Handbook, where there's lots of different tricks about measuring using diagonals, and using diagonals and perspective to do lots of crazy things, like even figure out how shadows would work within a space. So if you want more resources, definitely let me know and I can give you that PDF. Okay, and just to solidify this, I'm going to do a drawing where I have a cube in 2-point perspective, and I'm going to add kind of a curved roof to this cube and give it a door. So you can see that I'm using diagonals to find the midpoints. Here is a better quality version of that image. So now what I'm going to be doing is curving my roof. So I could make this ellipse if I wanted to, but this is going to be a half ellipse. I'm going to give my roof a curved roof. So it's going to be kind of like one of those weird barns that you see. So it's going to have a curved roof. I'm going to give it a door in the front. So you can see that I'm using the diagonals to plot out where that curve of the ellipse is going to be, where the curve of the roof is going to be. I have my midpoint figured out, so I will use that to draw in my door in the center of the image. And once I do that, you can see I added the slope of the roof in perspective, taking it back to that left vanishing point, and I use my diagonals yet again to create the curve of the roof in the back. So here's an image of it where you can see still my diagonals and my uses of midpoints. So there's my more finalized drawing all cleaned up. So hopefully I get you thinking about how we can use 2-point perspective within our drawings. We should now have an understanding about how we're going to use relative angles when we're drawing a room in real life, and how we use those relative angles to find our vanishing points. We should understand what wings are now. And we should be having a basic understanding of how can we use diagonals to measure, find our midpoints, and even draw more accurate ellipses. So once you do this, answer the question, and then proceed on to the rest of the module.